Little Claus and Big Claus. There was a town where two men had the very same name. Both of them were named Claus, but one owned 4 horses, while the other only had one. In order to tell them apart, people called the man with 4 horses Big Claus, and the man with only 1 horse Little Claus. Now, we're going to hear what happened between the two, because this is a real story. All week long, Little Claus had to do the plowing for Big Claus, lending him his only horse. Then Big Claus would help him in return with all 4 of his horses, but only once a week, and that was on Sunday. Yee-haw! How Little Claus would crack his whip at all 5 horses. They might as well belong to him on that one day. The sun shone so wondrously, and all the bells in the tower rang, summoning people to church. Everyone was dressed in their best and walking with their hymns under their arms on their way to hear the pastor preach. And they looked at Little Claus, who was plowing with 5 horses, and he was so pleased that he cracked his whip again and shouted, "Giddy up, all my horses!" "You shouldn't say that," said Big Claus. "Only one of those horses is yours." But when someone else passed by on his way to church, Little Claus forgot that he wasn't supposed to say that, and he shouted, "Giddy up, all my horses!" "All right, now I really must ask you to stop that," said Big Claus, "because if you say it one more time, I'm going to strike your horse on the forehead, and he'll drop dead on the spot, and that will be the end of him." "I certainly won't say it again," said Little Claus, but when people came past and nodded hello, he was so pleased and thought it looked so splendid that he had all 5 horses plowing his fields that he cocked his whip and shouted, "Giddy up, all my horses!" "I'll giddy up your horses," said Big Claus, and seized the tethering mallet and struck Little Claus' only horse on the forehead, so that it fell to the ground, stone dead. "Oh no, now I have no horse at all," said Little Claus, and began to cry. Later he flayed the horse and let the hide dry in the wind. Then he stuffed it in a sack that he hoisted onto his back and set out for town to sell his horse hide. He had such a long way to go. He had passed through a big dark forest, and a terrible storm came up. He completely lost his way, and before he found the right road, dusk had fallen, and it was far too much to reach the town or go back home before night came. Close to the road stood a large farm. The shutters on all the windows were closed, and yet there was a glimpse of light above. "Surely they'll let me spend the night here," thought Little Claus, and he went over and knocked. The farmer's wife opened the door, but when she heard what he wanted, she told him to keep on going. Her husband wasn't home, and she didn't take in strangers. "Well, then I guess I'll have to sleep outside," said Little Claus, and the farmer's wife shut the door in his face. Nearby stood a big haystack, and between the haystack and the house a little shed had been built with a flat, thatched roof. "I can sleep up there," said Little Claus when he saw the roof. "That would make a lovely bed, and I'm sure the stork isn't coming to fly down and bite me on the leg." A real-life stork was standing on the roof where it had made a nest. So Little Claus climbed up onto the shed and lay down, and turned on his side to settle in properly. The wooden shutters on the window of the house didn't quite meet at the top, which meant that he could peek into the room. A great feast had been laid out with wine and a roast and such lovely fish. The farmer's wife and the deacon were sitting at the table all alone. She was pouring wine for him, and he began with the fish, because he was awfully fond of fish. "If only I could have a bite too," said Little Claus, craning his neck towards the window. Lord, what a lovely cake he could see in there. Oh yes, it was quite a feast. Then he heard someone come riding along the road towards the house. It was the woman's husband on his way home. Now it's true that he was a good man, but he had strange affection. He couldn't stand to see deacons. If he caught sight of a deacon, he would grow quite furious. That was also why the deacon had come to visit the woman when he knew that her husband wasn't home. And that's why the good woman had set out for him the best food she could offer. When they heard her husband coming, they both were terrified. The woman told the deacon to climb into a big empty chest that stood in the corner, which he did, because he knew full well that the poor man couldn't stand the sight of a deacon. The woman quickly hid all the wonderful food and wine inside her baking oven, because if her husband saw it, he was sure to know what was going on. "Oh no," sighed little Claus up in the shed, where he saw all the food disappear. "Is somebody up there?" asked the farmer, peering up at little Claus. "Why are you lying up there? Come into the house." Then little Claus told him how he had lost his way and asked if he might stay the night. "Yes, of course," said the farmer, "but first we'll have a bite to eat." The woman welcomed them both, set dishes on a long table, and brought them a big bowl of porridge. The farmer was hungry and ate with gusto, but little Claus couldn't help but thinking about the wonderful roast, fish, and cake he knew were hidden in the oven. Under the table at his feet he had put the sack with the horsehide in it, because we know, after all, that this was what he had brought from home to sell in town. The porridge was not to his liking, and so he stepped on his sack, and the dry horsehide inside creaked loudly. "Hush," said little Claus to his sack, but at the same instant he stepped on it again, and it creaked even louder than before. "Tell me what you have hiding in your bag," asked the farmer. "Oh, it's a troll," said little Claus. "He says we shouldn't eat the porridge because he's conjured a whole oven full of roast and fish and cake." "Is that right?" said the farmer, and quickly opened the oven. There he saw all the wonderful food that his wife had hidden, but he now thought that the troll in the bag conjured it up. His wife didn't dare say a word, but set the food on the table at once. So they ate the fish and the roast and the cake. Then little Claus stepped on the sack again, making the hide creak. "What's he saying now?" asked the farmer. "He says," said little Claus, "that he has also conjured up 3 bottles of wine for us, and they're standing over in the corner by the oven." Then the woman had to bring out the wine she had hidden, and the farmer drank and grew merry. A troll like the one that little Claus had in his bag was something that he could certainly like to own. "Could he conjure up the devil?" asked the farmer. "That's someone I'd really like to see, now that I'm feeling so merry." "Yes," said little Claus. "My troll can do anything I ask. Isn't that right?" he said as he stepped in the bag, making it creak. Did you hear him say yes? But the devil looks so horrid that you wouldn't want to look at him. "Oh, I'm not the least bit afraid. How bad do you think he could look?" "Well, he's going to look exactly like a deacon." "Whoa," said the farmer. "That's ghastly, all right. I must tell you that I can't stand the sight of deacons. But that doesn't matter, because I'll know it's the devil, so it doesn't bother me as much. I'm feeling brave now, but don't let him come too close." "Let me ask my troll," said little Claus, and he stepped on the bag, cupping his ear. "What does he say?" "He says you can go over and open the chest that's standing in the corner, and you'll see the devil moping inside. But you have to hold on to the lid so he doesn't get out." "Come and help me hold on to it," said the farmer, and he went over to the chest where his wife had hidden the real deacon, who sat there completely terrified. The farmer lifted the lid slightly and peeked inside. "Whoa!" he yelled, jumping back. "I saw him all right, and he looks just like our deacon. Oh, that was terrible." After that, they had to have a drink, and they kept on drinking until late into the night. "You've got to sell me that troll," said the farmer. "Ask whatever price you like. Why, I'd even give you a whole bushel full of money." "No, I can't do that," said Claus. "Just to think how much I'll gain from owning this troll." "Oh, but I'd certainly like to have it," said the farmer, and he kept begging. "All right," said Little Claus at last. "Since you've been kind enough to give me shelter for the night, I can't refuse. You can have the troll for a bushel of money, but I want the bushel to be full to the brim." "And that's what you'll get," said the farmer. "But you have to take the chest over there with you. I refuse to have it in the house for even an hour longer. There's no telling whether he's still inside." Little Claus gave the farmer the sack with the dried horsehide and got in return a whole bushel of money, full to the brim. The farmer even presented him with a big wheelbarrow for carrying the money in the chest. "Farewell," said Little Claus, and he set off with his money in the big chest, and the deacon was still sitting. On the other side of the woods was a big, deep river. The water was running so fast that it was almost impossible to swim against the current. A big new bridge had been built across it. Little Claus stopped in the middle of the bridge and said very loudly so the deacon inside the chest would hear him, "Well, what do I need this stupid chest for? It's so heavy it feels like it's full of rocks. I'm getting awfully tired of carting it around, so I think I'll throw it into the river. If it floats home to me, that's fine, but if it doesn't, it won't matter at all." And then he grabbed one handle of the chest and lifted it slightly, as if he were going to shove it into the water. "No, stop!" yelled the deacon inside the chest. "Let me out!" "Ooh," said Little Claus, pretending to be scared. "He's still inside. I've got to toss it in the river as quick so I can see he'll drown." "Oh no, oh no," shouted the deacon. "I'll give you a whole bushel of money if you don't." "Well, that's a different story," said Little Claus, and opened the chest. The deacon crawled out once, shoved the empty chest into the water, and off into his house, where he gave Little Claus a whole bushel of money. Little Claus already had one bushel from the farmer. Now his whole wheelbarrow was full of money. "Look at that! I certainly did get a good price for that horse," he said to himself when he came back to his own house and dumped all the money in a heap in the middle of the floor. Big Claus will be annoyed when he finally finds out how rich I've become from my only horse. But I'm not going to come right out and tell him about it. Then he sent a boy over to Big Claus to borrow a bushel measure. "I wonder what he wants it for," thought Big Claus, and smeared tar inside the bottom so that a little of whatever